Welcome to lesson 9. Now, this is going to be a special lesson because it's coordinated with your other class, ID 112. And we will not have an in-class assignment about this on Wednesday. Rather, you will have an in-class assignment on your Friday class with Mehtap Hoca. Okay, now we're going to talk about drawing as is the subject of your Friday class, and we're going to touch on how we make drawings from our parts in Fusion. Now, I have a simple part open in my Fusion setup. This is a small size industrial camera. It's an aluminum body. You can see there are two main parts. Now, we're going to be making a drawing with one of the sides of this. We'll probably do a back side so you guys can experience what it's like and learn and apply it on your Friday class. Okay, now that we have our part open, all we have to do to start a drawing in Fusion is go up to the left Design tab to change our workspace, and we select Drawing. Now, we usually work from Designs, so we select Design, okay? And we get a right box asking us some stuff. Now, before we go into automatic drawing creation, we'll start with the manual so you guys can learn how to do it manually, because the automatic can be done after we create the drawing as well. Now, it's asking for a reference. Now, we don't want to take everything from this. We want to start one part at a time. As you get more experienced with Fusion drawings, you can do a full assembly as well. But let's do a single part. So what we do is we select the select and we select our back piece. Okay, it's highlighted as you can see. Then it's asking us for a destination. Now we're going to create a new drawing. We're not going to add it to anything. We're going to use a template that is from scratch. You can also create your own templates as you get more experience, but we're going to start from scratch. We're using the International Standards Organization standard. That's what we usually do in Turkey. We're using millimeters, and we're going to do it for a sheet size of A4, okay? And we usually use landscapes for our drawings, but you can also choose to use portrait if you have a taller piece, for example. We select the landscapes, then we select OK. Now Fusion is setting up our drawing. It might take a few seconds for it to get set up. Now Fusion is taking us to another workspace, which is of course inside of Fusion, but it's creating all the necessary items for our drawing to be complete. Okay, now it's setting up the sheet. The time it takes for drawing creation might differ from computer to computer or from the type of part that you're beginning with. Okay. And now we have our drawing. Now, as you can see, the part that I selected, or the component that I selected from that assembly, is under my cursor, and it's moving my mouse. But I have this drawing view tab on the right-hand side, which is asking me some important stuff. Now, the first thing is the orientation. Right now, it's getting this front view from the part design, okay? Now, I don't want to start with the front view. I want to start with the top view, okay? This is what I'm going to start with. And for the style, I don't want the hidden edges for this item. I want to see visible edges only. Now the scale is 1:1, okay? Depending on how big your part is, you can choose a different scale by clicking on the three dots, okay? If you're, let's say, if you have a small piece, like this camera back, you can make it 2:1, okay? For this example, I'm going to keep it 1:1, okay? Now the tangent edges, I don't want to see the lines, I want them off. Interference edges, I want to see them, and thread edges, I want to see them. The thread edges and the interference edges are usually more viewable in top, side, bottom views, front views, not in the ISO views. We'll look at that after. Now the automated center marks, we're not going to do them, so we can do them manually, okay? So all I have to do is now click on this paper. Okay, now I set it up, and when I select OK, it's going to turn into a drawing. Okay, now let's say I'm not happy with the size of this. All I have to do is, as you can see, the part gets highlighted in the drawing. All I have to do is click that, it becomes blue, and right-click it and say Edit View. Because our part is small, let's make it a different scale. Let's make it a little bit bigger so we can see it easier. Okay. Okay, now it's 2:1. Now, what you can see in the ribbon is all that we need for making a successful drawing. Now, the first thing is the base view. We got the base view from our model. So if we didn't have that, if we had an empty drawing, we could click base view and get another tab on the right hand side where we can select what we want. Okay, the reference is to create a sketch from a new sketch or a drawing under the drawing workspace, and instead of model, if I have other things, I can select them, but this time I'm only working from a single model, so I can have that as well. So if I were to set this up like this, let's say click it, okay, and say okay, I can have another base view, and in that base view I can unclick the things on the left hand tree which I don't want to see in my drawing. Okay, right now it's showing me a rendered one. I can go into edit view and change that into align style with visible edges as well. Okay, so I can also go back and change the scale of this one from 1:1 to 2:1 as well. Okay, so I can have these. Now you can see the threads on these screws. Okay, if I say edit view, I can select thread edges as well, but like I said, because these screws are threaded, there's no real difference that makes. If it was not modeled, if it was an instance like we did in the past, it would show our thread edges. Okay, let's close that for now. Now, so I have two instances from my original part, and on the left hand tree you can see those if I shorten them like this. Okay, so this one is on the right and this one is on the left, and the visibility is controlled from these boxes. Okay, so I can keep unselecting it until, let's say, I get rid of those screws. Okay, so I have this part, the internal electronics. Okay, so I have the back cover and the internal electronics on the same drawing. Now let's talk about the basic template before we dive into the other things. Now this highlighted thing, the lines on the outside of the paper, is called a template. And I have control over that template, okay? If I say edit view, I select the view, okay? I'm clicking the wrong thing. Sometimes it's harder to click. Let's see. Let's press escape. Okay. If I double click it, I can enter this, or let's say edit this, and I can start putting in information inside of these boxes, okay? Now, all drawings are required to have this to give information to the reader about what this drawing encapsulates, okay? I'm just writing stuff here that are usually found in most drawings, okay? So, I'm saying, okay, let's say stuff like this, 1.1, revision, 1.0, and on. Then I click Finish Properties, and I have that, okay? If I double click on this again, I can re-edit it. So it's possible to do it after the fact as well, or correct it. So I have my information, my outside lines, okay, and my parts. Now, let's get into what we have here. Now, base view is used to bring in models, okay? The next one, projected view, is used to get other views from your existing models in your drawings, okay? So when I click projected view and click my back plane of my camera, and when I slide my mouse towards the top, I get a front view. So if I slide my mouse towards the bottom, I get a back view. If I slide it towards the left, I get a left view. If I slide it towards the right, I get a right view, okay? All you have to do to place this is click on the drawing and then click OK. As you can see, now I have a right view as well. Now I can move them after I place them as well, so don't worry about placing it to the wrong spot. All you have to do is click on the item that you want to move. Don't let go of your left mouse button and drag it, okay? So I'm dragging my back view, or top view, let's say, then I'm dragging my right view, okay? For now, I'm going to get rid of my other base view of the internal electronics. Okay, so all I have to do is select it and press delete. So let's place them like this on the page. Okay, so I have my I have my top view and I have my right view. Okay. Now you can also do auxiliary views by selecting your parts. However, you usually do them from parts that have angles, okay? So when I click auxiliary view, I need to have something that I can have it on an angle. If I don't have that, it becomes the same thing as a projected view, okay? So as you can see, it becomes something separate. Now, the difference between projected view and auxiliary view is the way it's controlled. Now, as you can see, if I click OK on this, you can see that they're both linked to the same drawing, okay? They're both linked to the same drawing. So it becomes the same thing if I don't have an angle as such, okay? As you can see, it needs, if you look at the explanation, it needs an edge that it's aligned to. And on this drawing, I don't have an angled edge. Okay. That's the only difference. Now, the next one is the section view. The section view is pretty good. It lets you see the inside of an object. After clicking section view, you select the part that you want to section. Now you select your first cutting point. Then you select your second cutting point. Okay. Then you select OK. Then you drag it. Okay. Now you can see when I drag it and let go, I can see the inside cutaway of the part. Now it's on the right hand side, most of the stuff that we're seeing are stuff that we know. Now if I select from parent, the style is got from the parent. So I select from parent on this example. And there's one interesting thing that's called the section depth. For this example, I'm having a full depth. What that means is, as you can see this, my section line from A to A has arrows, okay? Those arrows represent the way I'm looking at the section. So I cut this part, I deleted the left side, and I'm looking at the remaining, which is on the right side, from the left, okay? So I'm only seeing the right side, okay? So instead of full, I can have a slice, okay? That means I'm only looking at my cutaway, only looking at this sliced portion, or I can have a distance that I can set, okay? I can say I want to look at from this A to A line until this point, okay? So I'm only seeing what's in between these two from the left-hand side, from where the arrows are pointing, okay? For this example, I'm going to say full. I'm going to say OK. As you can see, I got a hatch. Now the hatch means this part is a solid that's been cut, okay? So that's what the hatch is representing. Now, when I double click that hatch, I get a hatch window on the right hand side where I can change the type of hatch that is being used. You might need this as you get more and more types of, let's say, cutaways in your drawing. Let's do a honeycomb. And let's scale it down to 0.5 and say OK. Okay, so I get a honeycomb hatch. Okay, so when I cut this part from A to A, this was the solid part that I cut into. Okay, so, and I get a small representation on the top that says this is part that's been shown as a cutaway. Okay. Now I'm also going to do what's next is the detail view. Now the detail view is fun because it allows you to see details in a magnified way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a small detail view that encapsulates this area. Okay. And I'm going to put it right there. Okay. So this circle that I drew, let's do that again. so I can explain it while doing it. First I select the detail view, then I select where I want to get the detail view. Okay, then I get this small triangle square icon on when I hover my mouse cursor over the back plane, and I'm going to come over this circle. I'm going to click, hold, and drag this circle. Okay, let's say I'm going to make it this big. Then I'm going to let go and click again. Then I'm going to place this detail view. Now, the scale of the detail is controlled in the scale, and you can also give it a name. Okay, I want to get the style from the parent. Okay, I want to say okay. Okay, now we have a detail. Okay, I'm going to move the name closer. I'm also going to move the name closer on this one. Okay. So I have a detail view of what's inside of this circle right here. Okay. Now, in terms of drawing relationships, it's not wise to put the detail view on the left-hand bottom corner of this. Okay. Sometimes you might have to, but it's not good practice. The best practice is to put it in close relationship. Okay. Something like this maybe. Okay. As your drawing gets more complex, it's easier for people to read, okay, where this is in relationship to. So I'm going to move this B towards the top so it's closer in relationship to this. Okay. Now, we also have a break view. Now, a break view is usually used in longer pieces, but I'm going to show it as an example here. And for this, I'm going to bring in another sketch, another drawing, let's say. I'm going to add one, and I'm going to click base view, and I'm going to get the model. I'm going to look at it from the top again, okay? And I'm going to say scale 2:1. Okay, nice. I'm going to put it right there. And I'm going to get rid of everything that is not necessary for us to view. Okay, I'm just going to keep the back. Okay. What's this? This is the front, right? For this example, let's keep the front actually. So this is the front of our camera. Okay. Now, let's change the style to visible edge. Okay. So what I did was I have one drawing for the back, okay, and one drawing for the front piece of the camera. And for this, I'm going to say, let's create a break view. Okay. What Fusion asks me to do is select the drawing view. So I'm selecting this. And as soon as I select the drawing view, I'm getting this vertical line. Now you can change this depending on how your model is oriented to a horizontal line. Okay. What Fusion wants me to do is select a starting point. So I'm going to select it here and select an ending point. Okay. And the gap is the distance between this, and I'm going to show you what that means now. Okay. So I got this. What Fusion did was Fusion made a gap of 6 millimeters, cut everything that was in between those lines, and brought them together. So what I do when I do this, when I move this break line towards the bottom, I can keep viewing what was inside of that break line, okay? I can keep moving it up, okay, until these two lines would actually meet, and I could use this as to represent longer objects. So when would you use this? Okay, let's say you have a long object. Let's actually create a long object in a new design. Okay, let's say I'm going to sketch from the top. I'm going to create a slender object like that. I'm going to extrude it. And I'm going to put two holes, okay, on the bottom and the top. I'm going to create extrusions to create holes. Now, as you can see, other than the two holes, nothing is really changing between the top and the bottom. We have a continuous shape from top to the bottom, other than these two holes. Okay. So if I were to create a drawing from this design, let's say, let's save it. Let's doesn't matter. Let's leave it untitled. And if I were to import this like this and give it a scale like 4:1. No, that's too big. 2:1. Okay. I would have this huge thing. Okay. Let's say, okay, and let's put it there. Okay. Now I have this huge thing. It doesn't fit the drawing, but I want to see it big. I want to see it big. What I can do is I can go and select the break view, select the drawing, and say I want to start from here because that's where my bottom hole is, and I want to go up to there. And for the gap, I want to say I'll give it 10 millimeters. Okay. And say okay. Now what Fusion did was get rid of what's in the middle, what's between them, to show me the parts that actually matter. Okay. So it's putting these break lines, and it's showing me the parts that I actually want to see. Now, like I said, I can keep moving this break line after the fact to see a little bit more, but it's still hiding what's in between this. So I can use a larger scale of drawing to see the actual parts that I need without trying to fit it into the drawing. Okay, so that's what it's used for. Now, coming back to this piece, in a part like this, a break line doesn't make much sense because the object is already fitting into the drawing. It's not a long object, okay? So, I'm going to get rid of this break line. Okay, all I have to do is select one of them and delete it. Okay, so this is my front view. Now, breakout section view. Okay, let's do that on here. Let's do a breakout section view. Okay, sorry, can't do it on that. We're going to do it on this. Okay. Now, what we need to do is create our view first. Okay, so that's our cut view. And we're going to rotate this axis, and you're going to see what it looks like. Okay. Let's make it weird. Okay. And select OK. Now, as you can see, what it did was it made a cutaway into the part. And with a depth of 8.148 millimeters, and it's showing me what's inside of that part. So it's like a section view, but it's using it from a different angle. Okay, it's doing it on the same drawing. So let's change the depth. Let's say 4. So we're coming up, and now that we come up, I can see the internal threads. Let's come up a little bit more. Let's say 1. Okay, so I'm only now going into the sides of my part. Now, we can also do a different one. Let's delete this. Let's undo this, actually. Okay, let's do a different type. Select our view. For the cut profile, we have spline. Okay, let's do something. Let's do half of it. Okay. Now, that's the half of it. Now, let's project. Let's project this. And let's do it from the side projection. Okay. That. Okay. Now, this is more, as you can see, it's more meaningful when you have a reference. So this is what it looks like on the inside. Now the distance is set as half. Okay, so it starts with half of what you would have from this point to this point. It's always half, but you can control it. Let's say I want 10 millimeters. Let's say 10 millimeters. Okay, so that's 10 millimeters deep. Okay. Half is usually more useful, as you can see half of the object, but you can control how deep this cutaway is with the distance. Okay. So that's what we have. Now, these are all the view types until this point. Okay. You can create many different types of internal views, section views, break views using these. You can also add additional types with the perspective view. Now, the perspective view is used as a view that is, let's select something like that, as a representation of the part that you're drawing rather than to use it as dimensioning, which we're going to get to. So if I were to put this in the right-hand corner, for example, and say, well, let me explain these first of all. Now, this perspective view, like the base view, comes from the original model. Representation is model. I can select the orientation, whichever one I want. Usually, perspective is used with isometric views. Okay, so one of the ones on the bottom. I selected northeast. The scale, just like the drawings, you can change the scale. Okay, 1:1 seems to fit this paper nicely. And you can select the focal length. Now, if you look at the narrow, that's a light perspective. You can do a wide perspective where it gets a little bit wider on the bottom. It's like changing a lens, okay? And say, okay. Now, I have perspective view of the item that I'm working on. And these are the other views, the detailed views of the parts. Okay, so this would be a relatively understandable drawing, but this perspective includes everything. So I might not want that. I might want to only show what I'm actually doing in the drawings, okay? So I might get rid of everything else in that perspective, okay? And get rid of the back plane. Okay, so this is the part that I'm actually working on these bigger drawings, on the tops and sides. And this is perspective of the part, okay? So it's much easier to understand for the person who's reading it, okay? You can, of course, move these after the fact as well. And that's what the next part encapsulates. Now, can you do sketchings on drawings? Of course you can, but it's much more basic types of things that you can do, and it's only used for marking and modifying what you have. You usually don't have to do this, but sometimes it's useful. What is it useful for? Well, let's say you have a sketch as such, and what you want to do is you want to create additional lines on this, okay, additional marking points or additional items, okay, such as these, and you want to put some information into them or put some numbering into them, which you can do. And the nice thing about these, okay, once you create them, then you select them, you can change the line type, okay, and control the line width as well, which is important when you're printing out your drawings, and I believe you're going to see about that in your class, okay? For this example, I don't want to create anything that is marked on the drawing because we're going to get into dimensioning now. Now, the modified tools are the things we talked about. We can use move, and sometimes you might need to use rotate, okay? And it will allow you to rotate items based on a pivot that you select, okay? You might need to do that to explain some stuff, but usually projected views are what's used as standard in the drawing world. So unless you need to actually explain something better in a rotated view, I would suggest not to do it, but sometimes you have to. Okay, now, first things with the geometry. We're going to start with a center line, okay? A center line is important, especially when you have symmetrical objects. And what it does is it tells the viewer the symmetric line that goes through the object so they can view it as a symmetric object, okay? This is especially useful in squares, rectangles, triangles, shapes that have symmetric sides, and it makes it easier for the reader to understand that the object has a symmetrical shape. Now, how do you create a symmetric center line? Okay, what you do is you click center line, then you click the two lines or the two objects that you want the center line to be formed in between. So what I did for this one was I selected this line, then this line, and I'm going to create a center line from top, click that, to the bottom, okay? Now I have another center line as an horizontal line. Okay, now the next one is the center mark. This is used for round items, okay, circles specifically. So I'm going to create one here, okay, to mark that as a circle. Create another one here, okay, and another one here, and another one here. Now, this one might have been a mistake because I clicked the wrong side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get that one, delete it, and create it again. Okay. So I mark the center line for my holes on the outside. I can do it on the side as well. Okay, click one there. So I marked all my outside lines. Now I'm going to mark the internal ones as well. Okay, mark this one, mark that one, this one, and that one. Okay. For the center one, I already got the two center lines, which creates a center mark. Okay. The next one, center mark pattern. Okay. Now the pattern is very useful when you need to mark certain objects that Fusion does automatically. For that, I'm going to delete the ones that we already marked. Let's say on this diagonal, I'm going to select this one, and I'm going to say mark this one or mark this one. As you can see, Fusion calculates the ones that are missing and does it automatically. Okay. The only difference that you need to understand is it does it in, if you do it like that, it does it in a diagonal. So you might not want that. You might want to use the ones that are, oops, I was going to show that later. Okay. You might want to use the ones that are already not marked. So let's say we delete this one. Select our center mark pattern, choose that, then choose this one, okay? Now, Fusion creates, the autocomplete creates the relationship. So you might not want that. So let's unclick that, and let's just click this, okay? Now, as you can see, I can create a relationship in a round, okay? In a round circular way, or I can create a straight way. And for this example, I'm going to create a straight relationship. Okay? So that's another way to mark the center line. Okay. And this one, the edge extension. Now, this is useful when you need to extend an edge for dimensioning. Let's do that. Let's create an edge. Select an edge and extend it to, we need to find, okay, extend it to this one. Look at the top corner, okay? Okay, as you can see, because it would be hard to measure a fillet, by creating an extended edge, I'll have a much easier time measuring from corner to corner. Let's do one for the bottom as well. Select that one. Select this one, so I have an edge extension. Now, we're getting into dimensioning. Let's take a break before that. Okay, let's get into dimensioning. Now, dimension tab includes some dimension types, but you're not going to be using all of them all the time. So what I would suggest is to start with dimension that has a sun icon. Okay, so this one is a smart dimension icon, which gives a dimension according to what you select. Now let's select with the edge extensions that we did. Let's begin with those. So I'm going to select this one and this one. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to click, drag, and click, and I'm going to put a dimension right there. So that's 32, 33 millimeters. How do I know it's 33 millimeters? What I would need to do is I would need to put a reference somewhere that tells the reader that all these dimensions are in millimeters. So I'm going to go back to this, press escape, I'm going to double click this, and I'm going to say document type, drawing, and next to that I'm going to say all in mm. Okay. Okay. Now, it's better to write that somewhere else, but for this example, I'm just going to write it there. This changes a lot according to the type of drawing that you're doing. So you can create something over here as well that says all dimension millimeters. Actually, let's do that. Let's do that. Let's select the text. Nope, not that one. Double click. Let's click right there and say all them in mm. Okay. And okay, create text layer on this side and say something like all them in mm. Okay, so I did it in 3 places. Actually, let's get rid of that one. So that's too much. Let's get rid of this one because we have it on the right, left-hand side now. Okay, so we can do this. So instead of using the blue template, I created a text and wrote it right there. Okay. So I'm telling the reader that all my dimensions are in millimeters right there. Okay. Now let's pick our dimension, smart dimension, and let's do a few more. So let's give a dimension to this fillet. All I have to do is click the fillet, then without clicking anything else, as I hover my cursor, the dimension is following. When I click it again, it's going to put down the dimension. Okay. Now, let's say I want to move this. I have to press escape, click on the dimension, and I get this gray button. Okay, this button I can click and drag. Okay. What we usually like to do is we usually like to put dimensions of circular items that includes fillets on an angle. Okay. Sometimes, actually, some people prefer to put them with a jagged edge. So what I can do is I can click this jogged radial dimension, and then I can click on a radial dimension like this one, and oops, click too many times, select it, okay, select that one. Okay, so I can rotate it and move it. It's got stuck. Can't move it. Let's do it on another place to see if it's a fusion problem. Let's do it on the circle. Okay, that seems to be, I might have clicked too many times. As you can see, when I move my mouse without clicking it, I'm getting a jagged line. Now this is a better way to dimension round things, okay? Now I can move this, of course, after I place it to something like this, for example. I don't want to touch the original drawing, so I want to make sure that the jagged line and the dimension is not touching. So that's another way to put a circular dimension. Actually, let's try to fill it again. Let's see if it's fixed. Okay. Fusion sometimes gets stuck. Okay, something like, let's say, let's click this, and then we'll try and correct it. say that. Click escape, click on the line, and do something like that. Okay. So this jagged line, the jogged line, Fusion calls, it's much harder to mix with what's in your drawing, so people don't get confused about the lines and the actual drawing, the lines for the dimensions and the actual drawing. Okay, now we keep dimensioning like this. We keep on putting dimensions, but you have to make sure that you're not over dimensioning in a single drawing. So what we like to do is, if we can, let's actually go into our first sketch, back to our first sketch, and do an example here. If we can make it so, we would like to dimension some stuff on the relevant projections. Let's say I'm doing an outside dimension here, okay? But for this hole, for example, I'm not going to put the dimension here, but I'm going to put it in the detail, okay? The same goes for this fillet. I'm going to put it over here, okay? So it's makes it much easier to read that way. Okay, let's do an internal one. Okay. That's the internal one, and that's the external fillet dimension. Okay, so instead of making this very convoluted, I'm putting it in the detail. Okay. Now, I'm sure you guys are going to get much more deeper into this in your ID 112 class. Okay, so the other types of dimensions are included in the smart dimension, but there's this thing also called the auto dimension. And for that example, I'm going to click it just so you guys can see. What Fusion does with auto dimension is it starts creating a dimensional model based on its algorithm for all the dimensions that you might need. And what you can do is you can select it after it's created all the options for you and use one of them as a beginning. Let's say I'm going to select this one. I can play with the density, okay? I can say show me all 31 or 32, or I can decrease it like this, okay? Let's say I'm going to select 31 or 32. I'm going to select OK. Now Fusion put 31 dimensions on this drawing, but as you can see, they're all mixed up. So I need to organize them, okay? I would like to start by moving my central projection up a little bit so these get cleared, and organize these a little bit. Okay, Fusion has a snap, by the way. It can snap its dimensions. Okay, let's say I'm going to move that a little bit up like that. Okay, those seem fine. That seems fine. Okay, I'm not sure all of these dimensions are useful, but let's say I'm going to keep trying to fix this. Now, when you do auto dimensioning, you have to watch out for these kinds of overlaps, because overlaps are not good. Okay, you have to make sure that nothing is getting overlapped and it's still readable. Okay, this side is pretty convoluted. I wouldn't use this. So what I could do, I would select some of them and press delete like that. Okay, I want to get rid of some of these. Okay, and I want to keep some of them. Let's say I want to keep that one. that one. This one I want to get rid of. That one I can keep. Okay, so I'm selecting and deleting the ones that I don't want to see. Okay. Sometimes measurements will not move because they're at their limit, so you have to watch out for that. There's too many here. Okay, get rid of that one. Oops. Now I got a warning icon. I gotta check that. I click on it and it says reassociate. Okay, that means this dimension lost its association. So all I need to do is click that, click reassociate, okay, and click the part that it belongs to, okay. Now this one I don't need for now on this drawing. This one I would like to move somewhere where it's readable. Now this is the section icon, and this as you can see, this bottom it's going into my drawing, so I would like to get that towards the top. Okay, something like that. Okay. And organize it a little bit more. Actually move this down a little bit maybe. Okay, move that towards the side a little bit. And clean this up. Move that towards this side. Okay. Move that towards the bottom. Like that. Okay, this A and A section, I don't like this. It's too convoluted. Okay. Okay. Like this would be the maximum number of dimensions I would have on this drawing. And if I want to still show more dimensions, I would create another drawing with quick add, which is on the bottom left. Okay. So that's how you dimension. Now the dimension tools, like I said, have different types of linear, aligned, and all of this. You can use all of these 6 separately, or you can use the smart dimension, which includes all of these. Okay. Now, one thing that is used separately most of the time is arc length. Okay. Now, arc length is important sometimes to give you the length of an arc, which the smart dimension will not do automatically. Okay, so if I click this, as you can see, that's a different type of an icon. It has this arc icon beginning with it, which tells the reader that this is the length of an arc, not the radius. Okay. So you can do this. It's not used that much, but you might need to use it sometimes. Okay, it's good to know. Now, the baseline dimension, which I'll show on this side, when you select it, it'll give you the dimension from that line towards the outside, and it will create your baseline dimension. Okay. So, as you can see, I put many there. As I click, the chain dimension, that's a nice one. I'll show you this on the side. You have to start with, actually let's do that on the other sketch because it's much cleaner. Okay, let's move this guy a little bit. No, not that Let's move this out of the way for now. Let's clean this up so I can show you the chain dimension. Let's move this towards the other side. Actually, let's keep it on this side and move this a little bit. Okay, like that. Okay. So we have a clean base dimension, and when we click chain dimension, we can collect our base dimension, then move from subject to subject. Let's say I want to look at this. That's a one dimension. I want to look at this. I want to look at this. Okay. Supposed to click enter, not escape. Set the base dimension, this, and this. Okay. When you click enter, you have all of those specific dimensions. Okay. As you can see, it divides the base dimension into a chain, and the nice thing about this is they all use the same starting line for this base dimension. Okay, it's a nice way to create external dimensions of important parts of the object from the base dimension. Okay, now there's this arrange dimension where you can select multiple dimensions and arrange them. Okay, so Fusion creates an arrangement according to your selection. What I prefer in my drawings is I like to go from general to specific. So the outer dimension will be the largest dimension, and what's inside of it, what goes towards the object, gets closer to the object, is more specific. Okay, so the largest dimension is the outside dimension of this camera case. The next one is a larger dimension, and the one after that is even a smaller dimension. Okay, so it's from large to small, from outside towards the inside. Okay, sometimes the text might not fit, so you might have to move it towards the outside, something like that. That's okay. You can do that. It's used like this in the industry as well. Okay. What do we have next? We have match dimensions. Okay, so if you have different configurations between two dimensions, you can match them. We usually don't use this in Fusion. We usually use all the same dimension types. We have flip arrows, which is useful if it gets too convoluted. Let's say I want to flip the arrows on this one. As you can see, it flipped it once, flipped it twice, the arrows went towards the outside. Okay. The side you click changes the arrow. Okay, like that. Okay. I can do it on the base dimension as well. You can see the top arrow. If the line is too close, like this one on the bottom, if you flip them, the arrows are going to touch. Okay, so it's not good practice to have it like that, the arrows touching. So Fusion automatically makes it towards the outside, but sometimes you need to change them, so that's for that. Now the dimension break is used when you want to create a smaller line instead of continuous line. Okay, so let's show it on the baseline as well. Okay, let's add a break. Okay, this one, oh wait, the arrows have to be on the other side. Let's flip the arrows. Okay. Okay, let's add that. Okay, so this one, there's a dimension break, but we can't see it because of it's not an internal dimension, it doesn't show. This is an internal dimension, right? So it should show on this one. Oh no, not even in this one. Flip arrows. Let's flip the arrows and try it again. Nope, didn't flip the arrow. That arrow. Let's flip that. Let's give it a dimension break. It usually only works when the dimension doesn't fit between the lines, like this one. Maybe we'll do a smaller dimension like that. Let's see how it's going to work with this one. Okay. Let's do dimension break on this one. Okay. Now, I don't know if you guys can see it, but let me remove the break. Now, look at the line that is following from this. Some might mistake this for a drawing line. Okay, so I'm gonna break this. Add a break. Okay, now you can see that the dimension line is broken now. Okay, see this break? Okay, that's useful for telling people that this is a dimension line. Now, because it's got center lines marked here, it's not that obvious, but in this example, it's more obvious, okay? So you can see the big dimension with the dimension breaks, you can see the smaller dimensions with the dimension breaks, and even the smaller dimension with the dimension breaks. So that's all of our dimensioning tools. Now we have this thing called, actually we have two more. Let's talk about this. The tidy up usually doesn't work that well, but I'm going to show it to you anyway. What it does is Fusion arranges stuff according to what it sees on the page. Let's do it on this page and see the effects. Let's click tidy up. Okay, so it usually doesn't work that well. I've never seen it work that well, but it arranged stuff according to what it thought was best. Let's undo this. Okay, I don't think it works that well. I wouldn't use it. But the next one it's very important, especially for manufacturing from these pictures. Okay, what we have is the ordinate dimension. Now the ordinate dimension is what we call a datum point, which is the reference dimension from where everything goes incremental. What do I mean by that? It's kind of like the chain dimension we did here, but there's a difference. What I do first is I select the 0 point. Let's say this circle is going to be the center of the circle is going to be my 0 point, okay? I click that once and put the dimension, okay? Now, as you can see, when I hover my mouse, the dimension is changing, okay? Now, I'm gonna do this on the top to bottom axes first, okay? So I'm gonna click this, okay? And I'm gonna keep selecting points. Okay, so that's enough. Okay, so what is this giving me? So in manufacturing, we like to have a reference point. Now, it's good to know that this object is 33 millimeters in its widest point, but that doesn't tell the machine much. But this tells the machine a lot. If I use this point, as you can see, there's a icon that it's appearing over there. That's called a datum icon, okay? That's telling the machine that everything else that is that I'm seeing as dimensions in the center of my screen is in relation to this 0 point, okay? So this 2.75 is the distance between these two circles. This 13.75 is the distance between the center circle and this 0 point. So it's very useful for machines to know where these geometrical shapes are in relation to a 0 point. Now let's do this on the vertical. The same thing, okay? If I hover my mouse towards the top first, it's going to do it in the vertical. If I hover my mouse towards the side, it's going to do it on the horizontal. That's how Fusion knows, okay? Now, so if I double click that, my base icon, you can see that it's giving me some options about this dimension. Actually, let's do a little bit more verticals so I can explain it better. Let's do a vertical here, 0 point here, same as my X 0 point. Okay, let's do this one. Let's do this one just like we did on the other side. And let's do okay. See, the problem is I went towards the bottom once and it switched to the X. And I want to switch back to the other one. And this, oops, what's that? This is a problem with, you can't go below that line. Okay, let's do it again. Switches to the horizontal. Okay, let's do this. Okay, first up. Okay, did that again. Let's try it again. Okay. Okay. Okay, now it's working. And okay. So, I got my Y, sorry, my X coordinates and my Y coordinates on this side. So I can tell the machine where these items are exactly. Now, we talked about different dimensioning types. Now we're going to go into how we control these and what we see here, okay? I'm going to double click this and the dimensioning setup opens up. Now there are different types of representations as you can see, okay? This is the one that is in parentheses. This is the one with the underline. And this is the one within the box, okay? I can select all of them, or I can deselect the one that I don't want, okay? Now for different types of features, you have different parts of symbols. This is probably going to be a part of your course, okay? So, for example, this is a diameter symbol, okay? This is a tolerance symbol, okay? And you can select and deselect them. And if you want to delete them, you just select the text and press delete, okay? Now there are different properties that you can select, okay, from your source. These have to do with the types of parts that you're bringing in, okay? Here's my units. Here's my linear precision. I can select it to be 0.0 with 3 zeros or with 4. This usually depends on the type of manufacturing it's going into. I can select my trailing zeros or not. Okay. I can select my leading zeros. As you can see, in my drawing style, I don't have a leading zero, so anything that starts with a zero doesn't have it. You can select to have it. You can also select to display units. I don't like to display units because it gets more convoluted, the page. I like to have my dimensioning for the whole page written down below. That's a personal preference. And you can have alternative units in squared brackets if you choose. Okay. Now, for alternate units, you can also put a mark in here that says bracketed units are inch, or for alternate units, you can mark it like that, for example. Okay. I don't usually use alternate units. You can have tolerances. Tolerances are very important in manufacturing. Okay. You usually put these in every dimension unless you have a general tolerance, which you can write down here. For this example, I'm not going to put tolerances. And you can put an inspection. Okay. This means that the dimensions that you choose as inspection need to be verified after production. Okay. For this example, we're not going to put that. Okay. So these are all the dimension types. And the last one we talked about, the ordinate dimension, is for specifically manufacturing according to the drawing. Okay. Now we have some text items that we use. We saw what text can do as we put that here. We can just click it, drag a box. The box size can change after the fact. We can say tolerance, or let's say not tolerance, but material 6061 L. Okay. We can choose our font height, color, and all of these things, just as you know in Word, and say close. We can put a note on certain items. For example, we can say, I want to put a note on this thread. I can say metric free thread thin, which means make it according to the DIN standard, and I can put a standard right next to it. So that will be a note related to this feature. I can put a leader note. Okay. Now this is the same thing. The bottom one is the smart note. This is the not so smart note, but it comes up to being the same thing. Friend. Actually, let's put a more interesting note. Let's say I want to put this symbol and say free. Oops. For example, so no, not that. So close. Okay. And this note and leader note come up to being the same thing, but the one with the funder icon, I guess, is the smart one. Okay. We have hole and thread notes, which I can put on holes and threads. This, I would rather use the smart one for this, as this doesn't always work. Unfortunately, I think this is broken for a while. I hope they're going to fix it soon. Then we have the bend note, which is only useful in sheet metal. Okay, we don't have a sheet metal piece, but it tells you what type of a bend you can put a note. So it's a special type of note which you can do with the funder icon note as well. Then we have the symbols. Symbols are, like the name suggests, the surface texture. Let's put one here, for example. We can say there would be nice. Okay, we can say analyzed. Okay, type 2. Let's say basic type. Okay, so that's telling the person what type of surface we have. We have different kinds of markings. Let's say if we had a welding, we could put that. The datum identifier, we have a datum right here. We could put datum identifier right there. And Fusion, did it crash? Let's actually do it like this maybe. Okay, this area is getting a little bit convoluted, so I'm gonna put it right there. So that's first 1. Okay, so that's my first datum. That's my first datum line. And we have a feature control frame. Now this is important. This is usually used to control different types of features in a drawing. Okay, now let's select this one for that. Okay, so you put a mark and you type, let's say, what kind of a characteristic that you're interested in. Now this is a threaded hole, we know, so I want the roundness of this hole to be ash 6, for example. Okay, the quality of the threads to be H6. Okay, that's for an example. Okay, I say okay, so that gives a mark. Now these are all the things that you will see in your drawing class or an advanced drawing class, but this is what we have. This is the basic drawing in Fusion. As you can see, we can create a fully readable drawing. There are different approaches, different standard types. The DIN standard, for example, is a little bit different than ANSI, which is the American National Standards Institute. Approaches this a little bit different. So it depends on what type of a standard you're following. But the most important thing is for it to be readable. Okay, stuff like this, it's not appreciated that much. It's a little bit too convoluted, so I would refrain from doing stuff like this. But as an example of how the tools work, this is a quite readable drawing. Okay guys, wish you the best in Friday's class with Mehtap Hoca. I'll see you guys at our next class next Wednesday. Bye-bye.